you're having a great day. Hope you're having a wonderful week. And I pray that you're encouraged by this reminder for us to find a second wind for endurance. We've been walking through different stories linked to the Old Testament that we find in Hebrews chapter 11 that are motivation for us to run with endurance, because the beauty of these cheerleaders or examples of faith are connecting an idea from the end of Hebrews chapter 10 to the beginning of Hebrews chapter 12 that we're challenged and urged to run with endurance. And just this past week, we looked specifically at the example of Abraham and Isaac and the faith that both of those guys demonstrated in this crazy, extreme story and test of faith on Mount Moriah. I encourage you to go back and check out that sermon if you missed it. The end of our passage that we looked at this week then quickly and almost kind of blows over Isaac's faith in his blessing that he gave to both Jacob and Esau. And I really think this is remarkable and an important story for us to kind of dig into a little bit more deeply. And I just want to encourage you with a simple thought today. And in fact, in your own, I'm not going to read the whole story of Jacob and of Esau and the blessing and Jacob then running and then them reconciling later. That's several chapters in Genesis that you could explore on your own. But here is kind of just the thought that I want to encourage you with today as you walk through this day and throughout this week. We know that both Jacob and Esau and Rebekah were deceitful. They were prideful. It seems as though their focus was on themselves, on their own agenda, on their own desires and ambitions. And truly, they had a very dysfunctional family. I think this whole story is an encouraging reminder for us that even when we have family dysfunction, even when we have relationships inside our family where we desire reconciliation, we remain faithful and trust for God to do what only He can do. I think so many times that we look at our failures, maybe, for example, I'm not speaking to anybody directly, so I'm just going to throw this out generally. There may be that within your family relationships and dynamics, there is a lot of friction, a lot of trauma, a lot of hate or bitterness, resentment, whatever it may be, that it may have happened a long time ago, but it still kind of bubbles up in dysfunction or distrust with one another. And it may be that for you, there is so much guilt that you carry about whatever the dynamics of that situation are, that you now underneath may think that you are disqualified for God to use you, or you've done too much damage, that God can't be honored. And here's, I think, where we can find encouragement from the faith of Isaac. Isaac knew that he had a dysfunctional family. He had to have known. We're kind of reading between the lines, but it's clear that he didn't have a super great relationship with his wife or with his sons. But even in that dysfunction, we see God being faithful. God had a plan, and His plan included each one of them. And God used each one of them. Jacob, who was like the master manipulator and deceiver, he was part of this story that God had already established. And Jacob's deceit and Jacob's lying was not going to prohibit God from doing what God had planned. I think sometimes in our selfishness, maybe in a false sense of pride, we kind of sit there and wring our hands like, oh no, God can't do this anymore because I have disrupted His plan. Who are we to think that we have that much power and control? I encourage you today, there may be a relationship that you need to, for the sake of peace, do all that you can to promote the bond of peace and reconciliation and striving for forgiveness. All those things are important. In fact, Galatians 5 would tell us that's evidence of the Spirit in our life, that we're working toward that spirit of unity and of forgiveness and of peace. But what I'm encouraged with today is even in the midst of that ongoing journey to reconcile in peace and to overcome dysfunction, it doesn't negate the faithfulness, the provision, and the sovereignty of God that we have to then rest in. That is the faith that Isaac operated in, even when he was blessing two sons who were deceitful and manipulative and selfish and arrogant. Isaac's faith was not in their ability to carry out the mission. Isaac's faith was in God, who had defined and ordained the mission. And I encourage you today, in your prayers and in your conduct, to act with submission and humility to God. God, you are in charge today. You are in authority today. I love you and I trust you, and I want to be obedient to you. And it may very well be that genuine and sincere attitude of your heart submitting to the authority of God, it may lead you on a path that you truly can have reconciliation and be restored in relationship, as God can then move when our pride and our ego is stripped out of the way, that we walk humbly before the Lord. I think this is part of the emphasis of Micah chapter 6, verse 8, that we do justice, that we love mercy, but that's rooted in a humble walking with and before our God. I hope you're encouraged today by this example of faith, but ultimately by the faith of our God and his faithfulness to us, that may strive you and motivate you to walk humbly before him today and throughout this week. Just the thought I wanted to encourage you with today as we unpack a little bit more through Hebrews chapter 11, verses 17 through 20. Check out the website for more information. If we can ever do anything for you, don't hesitate to reach out to us. God bless you, and we will see you next time.